Hey everybody, how's it going? I am, as ever, Alistair, and welcome to the Wednesday night stream, where in a little bit we will be continuing with A Wizard's Guide to Defensive Baking by Ursula, which is getting to very, very big stuff. Literally, as we'll find out. 10 feet to my immediate left is the amazing Marguerite, who will be producing the show today.
Hi!
And is also in the chat. The unbelievably good fan art we saw at the top is not from the usual subject matter we deal with. That is fan art from Recrunner, which is the virtual race produced for the Zombies Run platform that myself and Merlafferty co-wrote earlier in the year. Recrunner remains one of the most fun projects I've ever worked on. For those of you who aren't familiar with Zombies Run, it is basically a fitness app that tricks you into thinking it's an audio drama. And it works. And what we did was they had commissioned a lot of alternate worlds for it, and we successfully sold one, which was the idea being you are part of a team of search and rescue astronauts going into wrecked or dying spaceships and pulling people out. It was so much fun to do, and the recording and production on it is so unbelievably great. It honestly blew me away. And that is fan art of something which came from our brains, from the amazing art of MRSTJ. And I was just made my day seeing that there. It was really, really cool, and I wanted to share it with you. And speaking, as we were, of Merlafferty, we have the first in a stream, a veritable stream, of special guests tonight. Both Mer and Divya, who are the editors for Escape Pod, the science fiction podcast anthology show that Marguerite and I co-own, are on the show tonight to read the opening monologue and chat about the 15th anniversary of Escape Pod, and also about the anthology that's just come out to commemorate that. And now, through the magic of buttons, I can introduce them. Hello, folks. How are you?
Turn up the volume. Hey.
I have done.
Okay, great. Good. How are you?
Pretty good. Thank you so much for coming on the show. My understanding is we are your second stop on the Epic Media Press Tour today.
You are. Yeah.
Fantastic.
I just spoke to Forbidden Planet TV a couple of hours ago.
Excellent.
How did that go?
How did it go?
It was fun. Short and sweet. Yeah.
Fantastic. So, what we're going to do is, if you could read the opening monologue we sent you, and then we'll have a chat about the book and your books and other things that are book related.
Sounds good.
Did you try
Murray, you want to go first, or shall I? I'll go first. All right. Pink Spacesuits, Blue Spacesuits by Alistair Stewart. He's right there. There are 3 trailers that have hit, basically back to back, for astronaut shows or movies. Let's talk about what they tell us about the current state of near future, near space science fiction. Full disclosure, this is a field I'm pretty invested in right now for just over 65,000 reasons, and it's one I've been fond of all my life, which is why LEGO is going to get even more of my money this year. And y'all can't follow that link, but it links to the Mars Research Shuttle on LEGO.
Which I got.
Which you own now.
Which I now own.
What I find most immediately attention-grabbing here is that the past is a safe place. For all mankind basks in the romantic afterglow of the Apollo program, even as it posits a world where it came in second. It's an immensely savvy move, taking the ultimate American engineering achievement and doing the only thing that makes it even more of an underdog, having it lose. That leads to the subversive, fun elements we glimpse there. I'm pretty certain those female astronauts will turn out to be some variant of the Mercury 13. I'm also pretty sure we see a glimpse of Major Robert Lawrence. The space program, always a stalking horse for America's self-image, re-imaged through adversity as something better. It's an incredibly compelling idea, and a surprisingly easy sell, given its alternate history based around something still in living memory. Plus, it does look fun as hell.
Then we get to Ad Astra, and things somehow get both weirder and duller. Like I said further up, this looks for all the world like Heart of Darkness in space. And while that's fun, lunar rover chases, it's also apparently got an emotional core that seems like the lowest of low-hanging fruit. It's early days and there's clearly lots to come, but right now it looks a lot like handsome, brave, amazing astronaut risks all to save solar system from improbably evil father. Which, when the improbably evil father has a lightsaber, is fine. When it looks worryingly like he's got in the eyeliner, done a bad job of it, and watched Blown Away on repeat, there's cause for concern. Here we go again, as Whitesnake once sort of put it. If that puts an earworm in my head, Alistair, I am going to kill you. Going down the only road male characters in movies ever seem to get, as they didn't once put it at all.
That brings us to Lucy in the Sky. Loosely based on a true story and the directorial debut of Noah Hawley, who does not know how to frame an image badly. It looks amazing. It also looks to tackle head-on the issue every astronaut has faced to some extent. What happens when the mission is over? This has been an issue as long as we've sent people into space, with the sheer profundity of the experience defining the lives of those that go. When astronauts were test pilots, it was especially difficult because when you've reached the top of the pyramid, what do you do? What happens when you have nothing more to win? I'm honestly really excited to see this idea explored, and especially explored through a female lens. I'm willing to bet you'll be able to put this and Interstellar side by side and see some fascinatingly different perspectives on certain beats. And yet, it is also a movie about a woman being too emotional to deal with space.
Each one of these projects looks brilliant. Each one of these projects has a downside. For All Mankind could so easily slip into jingoistic fan fiction. Ad Astra could have an utterly pat emotional core. Lucy in the Sky could just be about a woman who fell apart under the strain of her job. I doubt and hope that's the case, but I feel like when you view them all like this, it shows their strengths and weaknesses as well as giving us a read on the current state of the subgenre. From where I'm sitting, it's good news. The near future, near space SF is evolving, trying new things, and old things and new wrappers, and moving towards something very different. After all, books have already got there, so it's about time TV and movies caught up.
Okay. Thank you very much for doing that. I really appreciate it. And I would also like to present a written apology to myself from 2019, who had yet to see Ad Astra and had no idea what was coming.
That's the only one of those three I've actually seen. The other two sound more interesting.
So you like I have witnessed the dubious glory of Brad Pitt versus a baboon in Zero Gravity.
What?
Oh man,
Yes.
that whole movie.
I have not seen this.
Do not, under any circumstances, hurry.
Was it in fact?
It's Heart of Darkness in space.
Okay.
It's Brad's really sad,
Don't-
y'all. Yeah, it's just
don't bother.
mm-mm.
I thought it was gonna be cool and art housey and maybe like David Lynch in space, but not so much.
No, it's
disappointing.
mostly just Brad Pitt looking like this for like 2 hours.
Yeah.
The chat, however, seems very excited about the idea of Heart of Darkness in space. It doesn't actually.
I'm quite surprised we haven't had a baboons. Yeah, I give it maybe to 30 seconds. So thank you so much for reading that, and thank you so much for coming on the show, and also for the ridiculously great work you do, because you two are the senior editors at Escape Pod, which is our longest serving podcast.
15 years.
15 years, and. Woo! And to celebrate those 15 years, Escape Pod is going the one place podcasts almost never go. To print.
Right.
This very freaking week, the Escape Pod anthology is seeing print in the UK. And the reason it's not seeing print in the US will tickle me forever, and we'll get to that in a moment. But could you talk a little bit about how it came together and what kind of stories you've got in there for us?
Yes.
Yeah.
You want me to start?
Yeah.
So the Escape Pod anthology came together as a kind of celebration of our 15 years. We trying to do our best to please our existing fan base as well as hopefully bring in new fans who maybe don't do this shiny new podcast thing that's only been around for
Since 2014.
15 or 20
Yeah,
years.
of course, yeah.
Yeah, so we tried to mix it up with some old stuff, with some new stories, with a whole bunch of authors from throughout our many years of podcasting, and bring something that is hopefully commemorative and celebrative.
Fantastic.
Well, how we came about stories is, looking at the authors and looking what they have, or the ones we think could make really awesome, fun stories and had a tie to the show, and looking for reprints from people who also have a tie to the show and perhaps started when they were in a much different place in their career, say before they got the MacArthur grant, and now they are doing much bigger things than our little podcast, but we still like to remind people that we've had a wide variety of people at various stages in their career. So we've got some new people and some established people, and really, really proud of what we've put together, because we pretty much accomplished everything we set out to do with it.
Yeah, you did.
I feel like we did.
Yeah.
I
remember very few disappointments along the way.
Which should absolutely be a pull quote on the poster. No, you folks did an incredible job. It's a brilliant cross section of 15 years of escape pod science fiction, and yeah, it speaks very strongly to your editorial voice on the show as well, because of how enthusiastic it is and how wide-band it is. And the thing which I really loved when I saw the table of contents was I knew instinctively the moment I saw it, if I didn't know that you two had put it together, I'd be like, this is a Mur and Divya book.
Sure.
Could you talk a little bit about how you work together and what being part of an editorial team means?
I think I took this question last time.
All right. To me, it means having a partnership. And so, I don't know, Mur and I work together really well. It's a really short version. And that's fantastic. It's turned into a friendship, partnership. We collaborate on most aspects of the podcast, especially in terms of choosing stories. We generally touch base about once a month and review all the short fiction that's come through that's been recommended by our other staff. And we argue about it, except that we rarely argue.
And then there's just arm wrestling instead, right?
Once in a while we have to do sort of a virtual arm wrestle, but it's very rare. And we go from there. And I think one of my favorite parts is just having someone to squee over great things with. You know, when a really good story comes by that we both love, or when we got our first Hugo nomination, you know, it's nice to have someone to call up and run out of the office building and start screaming.
Of course.
And if one of us was, well, at least speaking for myself, if I were editing Escape Pod alone, that would not be a joy I would get to share. And
thank you very much for mentioning that, because Mur and Divya have now been, along with their intrepid associate editor Ben, who in my mind is Ken Kinney, action science correspondent for the local TV show that we run. I really should get around to writing that sitcom. The tagline is, "So Ken, we gonna live? Maybe. Cool. Now sports." You have now been nominated twice for the Best Semi-Prozine Hugo, which is unbelievably cool, and I think speaks to just how great you are at your job. So thank you very much for literally everything you do, because it's amazing. I'm curious, and I'm also having a weird moment of performance anxiety coming in immediately after Forbidden Planet TV, and trying very hard not to ask the questions they would. What obviously, with you being in kind of editorial positions means that you get the stuff which filters through the slush system to you, which also, means you still get a pretty widespread view of the industry. What trends, if anything, are you seeing at this stage in 2020, the year where March never ends? Is there a massive uptick in viral SF? Is there a massive uptick in hopeful stuff? Is it all grim? Or are there no real patterns emerging?
There are grimmer things. It's I don't see a topic trending, but what we're getting is grimmer than usual.
Okay.
It's not all virus or all world on fire, but it's just, sometimes when I read through, I think I have just had a bad day, and that's why I don't really like any of these stories. But, in our last meeting, we're talking and we're like, did none of these really turn you on? And no, it's just, they're all kind of, it's not even that some of them were good, but they don't fit the tone of Escape Pod. And it's, so yeah, things have been grimmer lately. And that's kind of sad for a magazine that was founded on the idea of having fun.
It is the...
Yeah, I feel like there's a trend. I feel like we're seeing more examinations of corporate and capitalist dystopias.
Yes. Good point. Yeah.
I mean, maybe it's not a trend so much as just there's a higher volume of those compared to not as many space stories, for example. There's a lot more, sort of introspective examinations of our reality rather than adventurous, out there kind of stuff.
And the thing is, you can sell us a story about corporate dystopia. It's not out of the question, but we're just getting a lot of it right now.
Yeah.
The chat's talking about Wodehouse sci-fi and how they would like to see Jeeves in space.
Oh, Jeeves in space!
Oh my god. Wodehouse sci-fi. Claimed. I want it.
You heard it here first.
Wodehouse.
Get writing.
I feel like someone should have done that already, but I can't think of anything off the top of my head.
The closest thing I've ever seen, and this is one of those things, much like the Armageddon toys, which I should have bought the day the movie came out and then sold for a profit the following week when the movie stopped playing. When I was a comic retailer, I saw this incredible indie comic that looked wonderful. And it was called Scream for Jeeves. And it was all done in black silhouette art print. And the front cover was just a Bertie Woodhouse figure sitting down at his table, recoiling in horror as his butler lifts a cloche which has tentacles hurtling out from under it.
I love it.
And I have looked for Scream for Jeeves in every second-hand bookstore I've been in and on every site, and I'm increasingly convinced it was a hallucination because I've never seen it again.
Well,
no.
Basically,
folks in the chat are saying they remember it.
Fantastic.
So now we need to find a copy of Scream for Jeeves.
Scream for Jeeves. Thanks. The internet is working its magic tonight. Fantastic. So, with that being what you're seeing at the moment, what is there you would like to see? Or what surprises you? Which is an awful question. It's like, this was completely unexpected. I must make a note of this to remember the next time someone asks me. But,
No, it's valid. I always like funny stories. Humor's hard, and we don't want to be a comedy magazine. That's not our goal. But we do publish funny things. When they impress us, and humor's really tough. So when I come across a funny story, I get very excited. So humor and Wodehouse SF is a new passion of mine. I recently would like to say that even though I just found it, I have not found a whole lot of examples of it. So I would like to see something like that.
Brilliant.
Yeah, I feel like I could also use some escapist science fiction right now. I mean, grim and dark has its place, and deep, thoughtful examinations of social problems also have their place. But that place is outside my house right now, and I think internally, I would like to see things get a little bit more mixed up. And I don't know if this is just coincidence that we're seeing more of this in Flesh, or if people are just processing life in their fiction as authors often do, and that's why we're seeing more of it. In which case, it might be hard for them to write fun escapist stuff. But personally, with my writer's hat on as opposed to my editor's hat on, I was really, really grateful to be working on something that was far in the future and very fantastical and had absolutely no relevance to any reality whatsoever these past few months.
Yes.
And so I think maybe I'm looking for a little bit more of that in Flush too.
I saw a comic strip many years ago about two women talking, and one's like, she says, I have to work late tonight. Then she gets on her phone with her boyfriend. She's like, yeah, I'm seeing another man. And she hangs up, and her girlfriend's like, why did you do that? And she's like, oh, he'd rather have something he could punch. And I get that feeling now of, if you give me corporate sci-fi, there's not a lot of action that could get me out of the horribleness of that dystopia. While I'm not saying just distill it down to punching, but you know, it is nice to have a story where you punch something and you win.
And bonus points for Nazis.
Yep. Years and years ago, a friend of mine coined the term resolution, where he said when he realized that one of his favorite types of story was the type which was resolved with the main character and the villain wrestling on a bridge, preferably one that's on fire.
Nice.
And yes,
Simultaneously in the rain and on fire.
Simultaneously in the rain and on fire. There we go. So yeah, I'm.
That would be another story I'd like to see.
We are both right there with you. I mean, we are most of the way through the BBC show Hustle, which is basically leverage with Cockney accents in a lot of ways, and it's perfect escapism because here's an evil rich guy that doesn't care about anybody. He has no money now and has been humiliated. That's every episode.
And now we're going to drink champagne and buy fabulous clothes.
And it just it's so cathartic because it doesn't happen. But here on TV for 45 minutes it will, you know. And it's I share your desperate need for escapism completely. Thank you. And as is always
because I have a preteen, I've been watching Kipo and the Wonder Beasts on Netflix.
Is that good?
We watched that.
What's that?
I said I have a teen and we watched that. It's
yeah. We watched the first 2 seasons and then we're rewatching them and catching up with season 3 because that's what we do. We did the same thing with Carmen Sandiego. But like all these kids shows, are just, it's like that is the place I want to be, you know, middle grade fiction, where there's not even really terrible bad guys in any of these, right? Like there's misguided people. It's the modern ethos of storytelling, and our protagonists come in and get to save the day. And I'm like, yeah, I think I need more fiction where you can actually save the day.
There's a 2-book series with a possible 3rd one on the way, which are called Sal and Gabby Break the Universe and Sal and Gabby Fix the Universe. And I've completely forgotten the author's name, and I feel terrible because he's lovely. But they are exactly that thing. In that they are semi-utopian science fiction, very kind of middle grade facing. But also really funny. The second one has as a major character an artificially intelligent toilet, who is
nice. It's Carlos Hernandez.
That's it, Carlos. Carlos is such a cool guy, and they're lovely, lovely books. And you know, like I say, there is this AI toilet, which every joke about an AI toilet is made, but is also one of the moral compasses of the book, and is just really cool. So
I feel like the AI toilet and Bob the sourdough starter would get along.
I agree completely. So you also cunningly mentioned something which I wanted to come on to, which is you are not just editors for escape artists. You are both fiercely talented authors in your own right. Could you talk to us a little bit about what you're working on at the moment?
You go, Mer.
Okay. I have a book with Ace that's with my editor right now. The working title is Mid-Solar Murders, and it is essentially Murder, She Wrote meets Babylon 5, where I hang a lantern on the fact that wow, murders happen around you a lot. Why is that? And I'm going to stay away from you because you're really scary because murders happen around you a lot, which no one ever seems to say in those shows. So I hang a lantern on that. Person wants to get away from humanity, so she goes to a diplomatic space station that's only got aliens on it. So she thinks.
And hilarity and death ensue.
Yes, both.
Yes. I have read a chunk of an early draft of this, and it is very good.
Thank you, Al.
All right. So I am currently in the final stages of my first ever novel, which is
Woo!
very exciting. It's called Machine Hood, and Machine Hood will be out in March. My funny story with Machine Hood is the pain of last week, which I was telling Al about before we went live. So the advanced reader copies of my book have already gone out so that people can review it. It's on NetGalley. It's all to the good. The casual reader will maybe pick up on some typos. They are in there. But as the book has gotten proofread by multiple people, some of whom have been very, very careful, one of them pointed out an inconsistency in the timeline where 2 different chapters happen simultaneously to the same character at the same time on the same day, which is physically impossible. There is no time travel involved. So I have had the joy of being a very clever author and trying to retcon my own book in ways to basically untangle this particular knot and make sure that my timeline is consistent without any time travel shenanigans going on. That's been good. And then in parallel to this effort, I've started drafting a whole new novel that is very, very far future, that has been my solace and my escape from the pandemic. Whereas Machine Hood is very, very grounded. It's set in 2095. It's not super immediate, but it's very realistic, near future thriller. I think they are billing it as Homeland meets Zero Dark 30. So I might say Terminator meets Zero Dark 30.
I think Terminator meets Zero Dark 30 is a better sell. Yeah. So when's that due out?
It is coming out March 2nd.
Fantastic.
You can pre-order it now.
Yahoo!
Fantastic. And Mer, when is did you have a release date for your next one yet, or not quite?
You need to hydrate.
No release date yet. It's it needed a big rewrite, and then the pandemic hit, and I changed editors, and it was kind of a perfect storm. So they're just like, I could easily freak out about this, but I don't think it's necessary to freak out. My agent's not freaking out, but they're basically like, how about we take it off the schedule, you give it a rewrite, we'll figure it out and put it back on the schedule when you're done. And then the pandemic hit, and so it's been a weird year of rewriting a book that I don't know when it's going to come out. But I'm satisfied with the latest rewrite. I'm really happy with it. So
Excellent.
I'm hoping to hear from my editor sometime soon.
We have resolution calligraphy already.
This is the magnificent thing about this chat. It spontaneously generates art. It's brilliant. Also, Emma, who did the wonderful opening art that we did, has just put together that I played Peter Lucas on the show. And I'm so happy that you're delighted by that, because I am too. It was really fun, and thank you again for the amazing fan art. So, the Escape Pod Anthology is out now in the UK, and
The U.S. release date is November 17th.
And the reason for this difference is officially one of my favorite ever things. Okay, so President Obama's first book.
First book, second book?
It's the first volume of his time in office. You know, it's A Storm of Swords, not any of the others.
Thank you. Now you've killed Burr.
I Oh God. Go on, sorry.
Is in fact humongous. It's apparently about 850 pages. And as a result of this, and as a result of the demand for it, basically every printing press in Europe is occupied. There is an entire tanker And this is surely an action movie waiting to happen, full of shipping containers, we have been told, full of copies of his book. And every other book has been knocked down the schedule, and ours is one of the ones that has been knocked down the schedule.
This has happened to almost every
Yeah.
UK author we know or publisher. All of them have said, there's a printing shortage, all of our books have been delayed. Thanks, Obama.
The entire publishing industry has the one legitimate thanks Obama you could go for. I'm so happy. It's like that unexpected Christmas present. It's like I feel complete.
Yes, I did want socks. Thank you.
So but if it's all the printing presses in Europe, why do you guys get the anthology before we do? I thought there was a problem in the U.S., which is why our version was cut back.
I have no idea.
I may have that backwards.
Is it all printed over there because it's Titan?
I think it may.
That's what I'm wondering if it's all getting printed over there and shipped to us, because the sort of implication I got was that it was shipping delays to the U.S. from
Right. Sorry.
Likewise, 13 Stories, the debut novel from the creator of the Magnus Archives, Jonathan Sims, or as he is known on Twitch, Johnny Big Streams, is also delayed in the US for similar reasons. Yeah. So it's a lovely problem to have, and I feel strangely amused by it, and it just means that we'll arrive a little bit later in the US, and someone else will claim they invented the anthology years before we did.
The print publishing industry, I don't know much about it, honestly, but it does seem a little odd that it hasn't globalized the way other things have. Like, you would think all the books are printed, in a handful of giant print shops somewhere in the world and then distributed to wherever, in whichever edition of publisher has rights to that particular copy of that book. Not that they're actually physically printed in the UK.
Exactly.
By a shipping container to the U.S., which seems really inefficient and strange. Way to do anything in 2020.
Acme Book Printing. We print books. All of them.
Yeah.
Why not? One of the facts we learned April-ish, right when lockdown started officially in the UK and when the first supply shortages started, one of the things that first was a shortage was flour. And the reason wasn't that there wasn't any flour to buy, it's that there was only 2 companies in the UK who printed the food-safe packaging for flour, and they were completely overwhelmed and had no supplies, and that's why you were literally getting flour delivered in, normally it's sold in 2 to 5 kilo bags. It was sold in 1 kilo plastic bags. For a while, that's all you could get.
And we have legit sacks of it.
Yeah, we went to Bakery Supply, folks, and got 16 kilo bags of flour because we make a lot of bread these days.
Which reminds me...
You're welcome for the segue.
Perfect segue, thank you.
You're welcome.
For those of you worried, Chungus is doing fine.
Okay, you have to explain this to
I must explain this to our guests, who even now are looking at me like... What?
Alistair, you're holding a jar in front of a camera. What are you doing?
This is Chungus. This is our sourdough starter. He was born on the 20th of June, and we showed him off on the chat because we were really impressed. Then stuff like this started to happen.
Chungus now has an entire...
Chungus has a wardrobe.
A wardrobe. I'm not...
He has costumes. There is a beard. There's a vampire cape.
He has, fan stickers... The whole 9 yards. He has a little vampire costume and a little pumpkin hat, and he's very popular.
And there is a feral sentient sourdough starter in Ursula's book called Bob. And several people have shipped Chungus and Bob.
Bob has been crocheted.
And Wendy crocheted Bob's bucket for us.
Yeah, exactly. So... Welcome to the wonderful wild world of streaming.
Because fan art is a glorious, glorious thing.
Awesome.
Yes.
The internet will ship just about anything.
Pretty much. Yes, indeed. But it's a fantastic anthology, and you guys you folks did an unbelievably good job on it. And I'm just really proud to know you and work with you. Thank you for everything you do. You're amazing.
Thank you for giving us the opportunity.
Yeah, we wouldn't be doing it without you guys.
That's right.
Well, I mean...
Super proud of the work we do.
And, I'm high-fiving you through the internet right now.
Internet high five.
To finish off, where can people find you on the online?
I'm gonna also ask the stream if they have any questions.
Oh yes, real quick. Does anybody have any questions for our amazing guests?
Well, you can find me on Twitter as @Divya'sTweets, and you can find all kinds of information, including most of my short fiction, as links on my website, sbdivya.com.
And we will put all this in the stream notes.
Yes, we will.
Right. My website where you can find my other podcasts and my books is merverse.com, and I am a relatively new streamer. I've been doing it since about July or August, and that is twitch.tv/MightyMer. So I do live podcasts and I do some gaming, although I'm about to take a week and a half off gaming, so it'll restart in November. But I do things like How to Fool Boyfriend, the dating pigeons sim, and Oxygen Not Included, and Stardew Valley. But I'm thinking about changing things up because I just bought a capture card for my Switch. Yeah.
One of these says guests. There we
Oh,
go.
yeah.
See? Ta-da! Okay.
Hey. Also,
How do you? Okay, Mer. When we have our Twitch play dates, we have to talk about capture cards and Switch.
yes, we do.
Okay.
Make a note.
Okay. I will.
I was going to say something which is very cool, and it's completely slipped my mind. Yes. What plans do you have for Nano? Are either of you planning on doing any streaming for it or anything for it on social media or writing support or anything like that?
I'm going to be taking my past, I used to do daily Nano podcasts, and as I discovered last year, this is one of those things that is very obvious, and I should have figured it out really fast, but I found it was impossible to do a daily podcast and do NaNoWriMo at the same time. So I discovered, I decided to take my reruns because it's pretty much all the same content. It's there's nothing new coming out in for Nano Prep or Nano Performance. So I'm going to take reruns and put them on the podcast feed, and then I'm going to be streaming live write-ins during my usual podcast recording times, which is 12:30 Eastern Standard Time. Yeah, it'll be Eastern Standard Time by then, on Tuesdays and Thursdays. So I'll be doing live streams. I haven't quite decided how I'm going to do it. I'm probably going to do it via Discord.
Cool.
But yeah, just live write-ins. That's it.
Fantastic. Divya,
Absolutely nothing.
also an equally valid answer.
No, I was really hoping to get to this novelette or short novella idea that I have been chewing over for a while, but I tend to be very monogamous with my writing projects, and I am in the middle of revising this far future thing I wrote over the summer, and I really, really want to finish that before starting in on anything else. And I thought I would be finished with it by now, but instead I'm only halfway finished because I have a middle schooler and life
And 2020.
tech job.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, I don't think I'm going to get to Nano this year.
Understand completely. Thank you so much, folks. This has been an absolute delight. I've really enjoyed talking to the pair of you on this. We will make sure that we have links to your socials on the Twitch stream, and we also do a big old Twitter thread of show notes after the fact, so your stuff will be linked on there, as will buy links for your books. Speaking of, Divya, I need to talk to you about your next one to see whether there's stuff I could do to help promote that, maybe. And
That would be awesome.
yeah, thank you so much, and I think we will wrap up there. Have a fantastic day,
Thank you.
and congratulations on the anthology and on being awesome.
Thanks.
Thank you guys. Thanks for this the stream, because I usually watch. It's very exciting. I knew what Chungus was. It's wonderful to be on it. So thank you, and thank you for running an awesome company that made the Escape Flight Anthology happen.
Oh, thank
That's
you.
correct.
Very sweet.
Yeah.
All right. Why don't you
Thanks
tell
for
us?
being awesome.
You want to let
Enjoy
the
your
stream know?
evening.
We're going to step away from
Yes.
Yeah. Likewise, we're going to step away for a moment, and then we will come back with tonight's installment. welcome back. How's everyone doing? Aunt Mer and Divvy are just the coolest. Seriously, all our editorial teams are great, but it's always a pleasure to get to chat to them. And
We should have the rest of the editors on too.
I was just thinking that.
That's a good idea.
Can you imagine the podcastle crew?
Oh dear.
Oh boy. Oh yeah. Every single team is very different, and every single team is superbly talented and just intimidatingly articulate. It's brilliant. It's my favorite job. I love it to tiny pieces. Anyway, how's everyone been? We've already done the Chungus Proof of Life. The boy is doing fine. So it's really just news and what's up with me. And news is that Saturday the 31st we will be conducting a live stream, which will go very well, with Alex and Hannah from Rusty Quill. We're going to be.
No bad decisions will be made.
There will be no bad decisions. All characters will leave intact. In fact,
And alive, honest.
not only will everyone leave intact, but the game, which is all set at night when we play it, will be set during the daytime, and everyone will make good choices. Alex, Hannah, Marguerite, and myself will be playing Little Hope, a Dark Pictures anthology game from Supermassive. There are also apparently dark rumours of Rusty Quill swag announcements, which, if they are anything at all like the hoodie reveal video, which is just Mike...
I have to find it again, I have to find it.
Just Mike standing in character select pose for 30 seconds. Good grief. So yes, that will be the 31st, and that will be big fun. What's going on with me? I got the edits back on the Doctor Who book. This is the second and I hope final round, which is going to be a chunk of next week. This week is a pickup for all sorts of little jobs. The newsletter is mostly done. I have a guest correspondent this week, which I'm really happy about, because they always do good work, and it's a fun movie that they're talking about. I'm trying to put together the Halloween specials at the moment, or whether there is more than one. There's probably just one. The next issue of Fully Plus is done. The one after that is going to have some really fun stuff in it. And I'm trying to work out what to do for NaNoWriMo. And I think what I've settled on, after some extensive consultation with my legal counsel, is something entirely different to the last one. So
Let's do something fun. Apparently we've spawned many people's nano projects now.
Good.
The idea of Woodhouse in space.
Woodhouse in space. Also, you folks are amazing. Finding Scream for Jeeves like that is just... You folks are what Reddit thinks it is. And that's not praise I level lightly. Seriously, thank you. So yeah, this week is basically just getting all the stuff in place to make sure that next week goes well, to make sure that Nano goes well, I also wrote a Stargate article, which was a surprise. It's a company that I kind of given up getting in contact out of nowhere, went, do you want to write about the special effects in Stargate SG-1? And I was like, yes. Are you going to pay you? Yes. Okay. So I have some glorious useful information in my brain now, like the fact that the technical term for the Stargate opening effect is the kawoosh, or as the special effects team called it, because it costs so much, the ka-ching, which is why in later seasons they use it as little as possible. See? Useless stuff. Yes, Stargate, and oddly enough, Wendy, they're looking for other writers. Perhaps we should talk. Kawoosh.
Needs to be an emoji.
Kawoosh.
You're giving me too many emoji ideas.
But yeah, it's a good week. It's one of those weeks where I'm just trying to lay stuff in and trying to actually take some breaks. My brain has not been especially focused the last couple of days, and of course it being me, I'm like, my brain is broken and it will never work. And it being Marguerite, she's all like, no.
My brain is tired and needs a break. Go stab people in ancient Greece.
So that's what I've done. I am on what I'm referring to as the Great Cassandra Level Up Tour of side quests in Assassin's Creed Odyssey, because I need to go and punch Medusa right in the nose, and that's going to end very badly at the moment. So I'm going to go get Super Swole and then go do it. And that's pretty much all there is with me today. So let's do the recap. Previously, basically, Lord Oberon And the Spring Green Man had of course I did the eyebrows.
Okay.
Had participated in an attempted takeover of the city in which Mona, our heroine, lives. They've done a pretty good job of it by inciting hatred towards magic users, taking over the government from the inside, and quietly killing people. Mona, who is a 14-year-old magic user whose speciality is dough and baking, although never icing sugar. Bread specifically, stumbles across all this when she finds a dead body in her aunt's bakery one morning. Aided by the brother of the murdered woman and by the Duchess who runs the city, Mona, after a couple of really spectacularly icky misadventures, successfully exposes the coup, and Lord Oberon is banished from the city, where there is conclusive proof that he is, in fact, a poop. It's not all good news. The army is 3 days away. The bandits that Oberon has been working with and planning to let into the city are 2 days away. Worst of all, there are 2 magicians left in the city. One of them is the Spring Green Man, who has successfully killed many, many others. The other is Mona. The defense of a city for 72 hours lies in the hands of a 14-year-old girl who is a bread magician. The bandits have no idea how much trouble they're in. And that leads us to this week's installment, which is on the iPad, which is not near me. So I'm going to grab it.
Hold on, get it.
That's fine. I was moving and stuff.
But now people can't see you.
Hello.
You're adorable.
Okay. Right, so if people do not have a drink, a snack, somewhere comfortable, meds which they require to take, now is a very good time to do all of those things.
Oh, you forgot the content warnings.
Oh yes, content warnings, accents, frequent implied violence, swears, all the swears. Chapter 29. Joshua and their Duchess and I stood on the wall over the great gate of the city and looked out over the army of Carrick's mercenaries. Oh, it was grim. They could have reached us by nightfall if they wanted to. All they had to do was keep marching past the outlying farms, but instead they paused at every one and set the fields to the torch. The daylight was fading, but burning wheat made thin, bright lines that winked out, one by one, as the farms burned to ash. I wiped my face. I was so angry I was crying. Spindle stood next to me, his arms on the blocky stones of the battlements. His face was the same as when he'd found Tibby's bracelet in the bakery. The gingerbread man hid his face in my hair. There was no point to it. That was the infuriating thing. Sure, the Carracks were going to try to kill us because they wanted our city, and that was pretty awful, but at least you could see why they were doing it. Burning the farms, that was just senseless destruction. We weren't going to get any supplies past their army, so it wasn't like they were burning the crops to keep us from getting them. They were pulling the wings off a fly. Because they could. The people were evacuated this morning, said the Duchess. The animals too. Every park in the city is crammed full of pigs and chickens and cows, and farmers yelling at each other. She sighed. At least we won't lose many lives to this, but God's the waste. The army was close now. You could just make out individuals in the ragged lines marching towards us. There were a lot of them. Don't ask me how many there were. I can estimate a cup of flour or a tablespoon of baking powder, but armies aren't ingredients. There were a lot, compared to the pitiful number of men I'd seen drilling earlier. So, we're doomed, my gut said conversationally. Yup, said my brain. So long as we're clear. The great gate was closed. of course. All the gates and the walls of the city were closed and barred with iron portcullises, but the city didn't exactly stop there. The problem was having a walled city. The problem with having a walled city, pardon me, the problem with having a walled city is that it limits how big you can get. The current walls were actually the third or fourth set around the city in concentric rings, like an onion. Unfortunately, previous generations had cannibalized those earlier walls for building material, so if we didn't hold them at the gate, we really didn't have much in the way of a fallback position. Outside the walls, however, it's not a sharp transition with city on one side and country on the other. There's a whole sort of town outside the gates. People driving their goods to the city to sell are hot and thirsty by the time they arrive, so somebody sets up a food and drink stand outside to meet them. Over time, the stand becomes a bona fide inn, and then somebody else sets up another food stand, and so on and so forth. And some people can't afford to live in town, and rather than set up in a place like Rat's Elbow, they opt to live just outside the city walls. And there are a lot of businesses that you really don't want inside the city, like the knackers and the tanners. The smells associated with leather making will make your nose try to crawl off your head. And of course, the knackers and the tanners need some place to live, and somebody sets another food stand up to sell to them, although most of them burned out their sinuses long ago and can't taste a thing. And you get the idea. We have half a mile worth of town along all the major roads into the city before you get to the walls at all. I expected the Carracks to burn that too. They didn't. Joshua shook his head when I asked. The fire will spread too quickly. He said they have to camp there and there's too much chance the whole place will go up like a tinderbox. If they're fighting fires, they're not fighting us. He put a hand on his sword hilt. They know that there are probably still people in there. There are always people who won't listen to an evacuation order. But even if we had a dozen trained assassins hiding in the knacker yard, they'd still lose fewer people than if they turned the whole place into an inferno. Do we have a dozen trained assassins? I asked hopefully. The Spring Green man had definitely soured me on the notion of assassins, but I was willing to change my opinion. No, said Joshua. Spindle coughed. We all looked at him, and he stared up into the sky with his hands behind his back and said, Well, not assassins, exactly. Spindle, said the Duchess with weary amusement. What do you know that we don't? Couple of the lads, said Spindle, out of the rat's nest, you know. We ain't like the army, not as such, but this is our city too. He scratched his chin. Heard that a couple of them went out the smuggler's tunnel. Slug wouldn't go, but one-eyed Benji and Leaky Pig did, and most of Kraken's bully boys and all. The names of these people amazed me, said the Duchess. Really, the nobles are so unimaginative by comparison. I wonder if Leaky Pig would like a cabinet position. Don't know how much good it will do having them out there. Can't hurt, though, Spindle finished. It may help a great deal, said Joshua. Taking out a few individual fighters won't make much difference, but if they can make the Carracks agitated, if they can get them jumping at shadows, I'd far rather face an army that didn't get a good night's sleep. If you get the chance, Spindle, said the Duchess, looking bemused, please extend the thanks of the Crown to One-Eyed Benji and Crackhand and, well, everyone. I doubt they'd like public recognition. They're stopping, said Joshua, leaning over the battlements. He was right. They had halted a few hundred yards from the gate. We could hear them in the distance, a hum of voices and jeers and laughter, not unlike the sounds of the city itself. Can't we do something? I asked. They're sitting right there. Joshua shook his head. Out of arrow range. Know exactly what they're about. They'll set up camp, and Oberon must have told them we don't have the resources to lead a charge against them. We stood on the battlements while the sun went down behind the enemy. Rising smoke from the burning fields made black columns against the sunset. I turned away. I felt ancient, like I'd aged a lifetime standing there. The Mona who'd spent the afternoon putting jar lids onto sourdough starters seemed distant and young and innocent, and the Mona who found a dead girl on the bakery floor was some other person from some other life. It's a strange way to feel when you're 14. I need to get back to the ovens, I said. I have a few more ideas, and we don't have very much time. And yes, that was an eyebrow. That was an eyebrow with an accent, because I'm that good.
An accent eyebrow.
Chapter 30. When I got back to the palace kitchens, the blacksmiths weren't ready yet. Argonel was overseeing one of the shields full of hot coals, which hadn't been attached properly and had spilled down the cookie sheet. "Sorry, Wizard Mona," he said, waving an apprentice into position. "I'd threatened to have the man responsible horsewhipped, but I fear that it was me. We'll have up in an hour or less." "It's all right," I said absently, reaching up to pat his arm. He had biceps bigger than my head. "There's something I need to do first. I'd rather face an army that didn't get a good night's sleep." I was nearly at the kitchen door when Harold, the guard, stepped out and pulled me aside. "Wizard Mona." I was pretty sure that I was going to get really tired of being called Wizard Mona before this was over. "Yes." He shifted his feet and said, "Mona, Wizard Elgar's escaped." My head was still full of carracks and burning fields, and I started to say, "Who?" And then the bottom dropped out of my stomach because he was talking about the Spring Green Man. "Escaped," I said faintly. Harold nodded. "He may have had an ally in the inside. We haven't had time to smoke out all of Oberon's people yet. He shouldn't have been able to escape from a wizard prison by himself, but we've been so short-handed that we haven't been checking the cells as regularly as we should, and well, he's gone." My stomach seemed to be laying somewhere on the ground, several feet away. On the other side of the courtyard, the apprentices yelled, "Hup!" and the shield of coal swung, clanking on the chains. There was a hiss as coal splashed over the sides, and somebody cursed. "It would be very foolish of him to come after you," said Harold earnestly, putting a hand on my shoulder. "He'll probably go over the walls and try and meet up with Oberon. It will be suicide to try to get to you now." "He's not right," I said, remembering that voice giggling in the dark in the cellar under the bakery. "It wasn't that Elgar was mad. Knackering Molly was mad, and she'd never do anything like that. There was something else wrong with him. Some kind of terrible darkness. I don't know if he'll care that it's suicide." Harold didn't argue. "I'll be guarding you," he said. "You won't be left unattended for a minute. If he does attack, that should buy you time to do something magical in your own defense." I nearly laughed, or cried, or both. Magical in my own defense? What was I going to do? Bake an attack scone at him? Unless Harold managed to buy me 2 hours in an oven on medium heat, there wasn't a lot I could do without prep work. I didn't say any of it. It didn't matter if 100 Spring Green men were after me. There were still thousands of Carracks outside the city, and they were coming in. I could do nothing about Elgar right now. I might be able to do something about them. In magic, creativity is as important as knowledge. "Fine," I said to Harold. "Fine. Come with me." "Aunt Tabitha," I said, stepping into the kitchens, "I need to make gingerbread, and I need a bunch of cookie sheets." These were probably going to be the worst gingerbread men ever. You're supposed to let the dough rest for a couple of hours before you bake it, and I just didn't have time. But that was okay, because the worst gingerbread men ever is exactly what I wanted to make. Aunt Tabitha helped me bash the dough together. It was a big batch, double what we make when we do the cooking in the bakery, and that makes 40 or 50 cookies by itself. Oh yeah, it's on.
I need like an evil hat, but I don't have an evil hat.
Spindle hunched up next to the fireplace, and my gingerbread man stood on the mantel and glared suspiciously down at the batch of dough I was making. Jenny ran back and forth, bringing spoons and flour and towels and anything else we needed. Harold stood by the door and looked so tough and professional and guardy that I wanted to cry. "Cayenne in gingerbread?" asked Aunt Tabitha mildly. "Mona, are you sure?" "I'd had broken glass, so I didn't think it would hurt my hands," I said, dumping most of the cayenne in and looking around for something worse. "Oh, have we got any rat poison?" Jenny found it, a big jar full of dusty-looking granules. She brought in the jar looking proud and worried. Aunt Tabitha ran her hands over her face and said, "Mona, Nobody's going to eat them, I said. I hope. I need them. I need them to be bad. I dumped the rat poison into the mixing bowl. You know what you're doing, I suppose, said Aunt Tabitha, adding poison to her own batch. Not really, I said, and was surprised to find out that I was smiling. But we'll find out. The dough under my hands was bad. I could feel it. There was malice in it. It wanted to hurt people. I fed that as much as I could, pouring all my anger at the sight of the burning fields into it, and all my terror at the news that the Spring Green Man had escaped. By the time I was done, you wouldn't have had to worry about rat poison. The dough would try to choke you before you ever managed to swallow it. I really didn't like doing this. The thing about baking is that you're feeding people and it's nice. You make things that taste good and that make people happy to eat them. The very best thing about being a baker is watching somebody bite into a blueberry muffin or a fresh slice of sourdough dripping with butter and seeing them close their eyes and savour the taste. You are making their lives better. Just a tiny little bit. It is nearly impossible to be sad when eating a blueberry muffin. I'm pretty sure that's a scientific fact. Making cookies that were bad and horrible that no sane person would eat, well, it was like being an anti-baker. It was the opposite of what I was supposed to be doing. I gritted my teeth. I remembered the lines of burning wheat. Aunt Tabitha helped me slap out a big ball of dough on each cooking sheet and helped to roll it flat, but I was the one who cut each gingerbread shape. I didn't have a cookie cutter, so they were kind of irregular, but they had 2 arms and 2 legs each, and that was the important thing. They were also really big. For gingerbread men, at any rate. It was 1 to a cookie sheet, about 1 foot wide and 18 inches tall. We ended up with 23. We slid them into the oven. The big palace ovens were perfect for this, because you could fit 23 cookie sheets inside without a problem. I took the scraps left over from cutting the cookies and threw them back into the mixing bowl. If the book was right, that dough should be linked to the cookies, and I was hoping that I could use the magic of sympathy to control the cookies through the dough. Well, that was half of it down. I turned to Spindle. Spindle, for this part, I'm going to need your help. Spindle slid down from the raised brick hearth and fired off a mocking salute. At your service, General Mona. Aunt Tabitha picked up the mixing and baking equipment and went off to the scullery to make sure that it got cleaned immediately and that nobody sampled rat poison by mistake. I leaned against the outside of the fireplace, next to Spindle. Look, you know people, right? These people going out to harass the Carracks tonight. Of course I do, said Spindle. Ran with some of them back in the day. Not crackheads, boys. No one would do that. But some of the others. Do you know anybody who could take out a load of cookies? I asked, nodding to the ovens. They're going to be bad. I think I can make them smart enough to start harassing the Carracks. They aren't fighters exactly, but they'll want to make mischief. Some of the ordinary gingerbread men get a little, feisty sometimes. They'll tie your shoelaces together and stuff. But these are going to be so much worse. I thought they could, spook the horses and cut ropes and put rocks in people's beds. Put pepper in the flour and set fire to bedrolls. Steal their daggers and their socks. Put out their eyes while they're asleep. Let's not get carried away, Spindle. You ever try to fight without any eyes? No, and neither have you, so don't start. Anyway, I need somebody to take 2 sacks of cookies outside the walls and set them loose near the Carracks camp. Spindle nodded. Right, I'll do it. No, you won't, I snapped. You could get killed. Can't you find somebody going out there, Wiggly Bob or whatever their names are, and have them do it? Well, they've all gone already, said Spindle, and it'd take hours to find somebody else and convince them. I know how to get out. I know the way through the knacker yard. They ain't going to catch me. Spindle, no. He folded his arms over his chest. Look, Mona, I can do this. let me do this. I ain't a wizard like you. I ain't a fighter. If the carrots get through, I ain't going to be able to do much, but I'm real good at sneaking around. I'm not saying I could pick the sentry's pockets, because I probably can't, and I wouldn't try, but I can get in close enough to set your little fingers loose. But this is maybe the only thing I'm going to do that will be any help. Let me do it. I probably should have said no. It was crazy to let him go sneaking around outside the walls, but he was right. And this wasn't that much more dangerous than sneaking into the castle, was it? He'd done that 10 times as well as I had. I got stuck in a loo. Besides, if he was outside the walls, at least Spindle wouldn't be in the crossfire if the Spring Green Man came for me. All right, I said heavily. You can take them. But be careful. If they kill you, I will never, never forgive you. Yeah. It took me 10 minutes to make up a big batch of icing, and by the time I was done, the cookies were coming out of the oven. Aunt Tabitha emerged from the scullery, and Spindle acquired 2 burlap potato sacks by the simple expedient of dumping potatoes all over the pantry. You know we had leftover flour sacks, right? So now we've got potato sacks too. Jenny put her hand to her mouth and giggled. Oh, Cook'll be mad as fire when he sees that. We yanked cookie sheets from the oven and dropped them on the big wooden table. I hurriedly iced eyes and mouths onto each one. I gave them little fangs. They wouldn't be able to bite with them, but they seemed appropriate. When they were all treated with icing and had cooled a bit, I grabbed the ball of leftover dough and took a deep breath. Okay, cookies, listen up, I said. We've got a job to do. You're going to go out there and make a whole bunch of people miserable. Now get up. And I pushed Magic and Will into the ball of dough and threw it into the cookies. There was a long moment when nothing happened, and I pushed the Magic even harder, screwing my face up, and I can't really explain this bit, sort of shoving with the inside of my head, and then one of the gingerbread men sat up. The kitchen filled with soft ripping sounds as the cookies pulled themselves free of their cookie sheets, sitting up and stretching and looking around. Okay, I said, here's what we're going to. One of the cookies picked up a mixing spoon and bashed the cookie next to it over the head. The cookie recoiled with a spray of crumbs and threw itself at its attacker, leaving one of its legs behind on the cookie sheet. Apparently the grease hadn't been done quite right on that one. Stop! I yelled, rushing forwards as the one-legged cookie hopped furiously after the spoon-wielding one. Stop! Stop! Other cookies charged into the fray. Some of them went for their neighbours, while others started arming themselves with kitchen utensils. 2 formed a temporary alliance and flipped up a cookie sheet as a makeshift barricade. I said stop! They weren't listening. There was a jar of walnuts at one end of the table, and the 2 cookies behind the barricade broke into it and began pelting everyone indiscriminately with the contents. Spindle dove under the table. Harold drew his sword and waved it vaguely, apparently not sure on whether he should be defending me or running a rogue cookie through. Aunt Tabitha whipped a frying pan around and connected with a cookie that had a whisk in each hand and a homicidal expression on its icing face. This is horrible, I thought, sinking my fingers into the ball of gingerbread scraps. I've blown it. What was I thinking? I made evil bread, and it's not going to listen just because you asked nicely. I'll have to pull the magic out of all of them. What a waste of time and energy. Suddenly there was a loud banging. I looked up. Everybody looked up. My gingerbread man was standing in the middle of the table, clanging a spoon against a cookie sheet like a gong. I expected the bad cookies to pelt him with walnuts and was about to dive to his rescue. He was a quarter of their size and so stale, when I realized that all the other cookies were staring at him. When he was sure he had everyone's attention, he set the spoon down and waved his arms, stomping back and forth and glaring. It's completely ridiculous, and I still don't quite believe it, but somehow he communicated with the other cookies. Now, don't get me wrong. Dough is not smart. It's not like they talked philosophy and spoke a language called cookieese. Nevertheless, my gingerbread man somehow managed to convey something to the bad cookies. It was mostly mime, and arm waving, and, well, there was a lot of glaring, too. It went on for a minute or two while the bad cookies looked, insomuch as cookies can, kind of embarrassed. The spoon wielder set down its spoon and helped the one-legged cookie pry its missing limb off the sheet, and the walnut throwers put the lid back on the jar and tried to pretend they hadn't done anything. "Well, I'll be," said Aunt Tabitha. My gingerbread man finished his arm waving, turned, bowed, and extended an arm in my direction. The bad cookies looked to me expectantly. I figured that was my cue. I cleared my throat. Right, Well, if you are all willing to climb into these sacks here, my friend Spindle is going to take you someplace where you can be as bad as you possibly can. There'll be a whole lot of people trying to sleep. I want you to make sure they get as little sleep as possible. Cut all the ropes, knot every lace, and I trailed off. The cookies were grinning like wolves, if wolves were flat and golden brown and smelled vaguely of cayenne. It occurred to me that something made of rat poison and mischief was probably going to have better ideas about how to harass a sleeping army than a mere human baker. Do your worst, then, but not until you're released from the sack and Spindle gives you the go-ahead. That's an order. The cookies shifted their feet and looked, not at me, but at the stale gingerbread man, who shook a fist, or as much a fist as a gingerbread man can make, at them. Spindle climbed out from under the table, and with remarkably little fuss, the cookies climbed into the sacks. I had been afraid that they would make an untenably large pile, but they all laid flat and stacked together, so when Spindle slung the sacks over his shoulder, he looked like a tinker with a pack, rather than St. Nicholas doing his rounds at Yule. "You're sure you can do this?" I asked him worriedly. Spindle looked at the sacks, more than a little suspiciously. "As long as they don't get any ideas." Without any prompting, my gingerbread man hopped onto the sack and climbed to Spindle's shoulder. "He'll go with you," I said. "If they get out of line, he'll take care of them." I hoped that was true. I hoped the cookie would keep Spindle safe, or Spindle would keep the cookie safe, or both of you stay safe. I said helplessly, "Come back as soon as you've dropped them off, okay?" It was full dark now, and Argonel was at the door of the kitchen. I could see the red glow of our outdoor oven reflected against the side of his face. It was time to make the columns. "I'll be fine," said Spindle. "Won't go anywhere near him." He switched the sacks to the other shoulder, then gave me a quick, awkward hug with one arm. "See you in a few hours, knock 'em dead," and went out through the pantry. Aunt Tabitha gave me a suspicious look, as if she knew what Spindle was planning, then very, very obviously decided not to ask about it, and looked away. I took a deep breath. I didn't have time to worry. There was too much else to be done. "Your oven awaits, Wizard Mona," said Argonel. "Don't call me that," I said tiredly, and went to go build the city's defenders out of bread. Significant tea. Chapter 31. The dough golems were going to be lumpy. There was really no getting around it. They were made out of a couple of 100 pounds of dough apiece, and what we wound up doing was throwing head-sized lumps of dough onto the big cookie sheets, creating bigger and bigger piles until we built a roughly man-shaped form. The end result was going to be absolutely flat on the backside, and I was already worried about how we were going to pry it off the cookie sheet. Aunt Tabitha had dumped an entire bucket of warm oil down on the surface, but it was burning off. It was burning off fast. We would be lucky if oil was all that burned. You generally bake bread for about half an hour in the oven, maybe more or less, depending on the size of the loaf. A hotter oven cooks things faster, but there's a limit on it. You can't shove dough into a blazing inferno and expect to have baked bread in 5 minutes. What you'll get is a lump of raw dough with a burnt black shell. I had no idea how hot the outdoor oven was. Hotter than I'm used to, for sure. The blacksmiths were heating it like a forge. Argonel apologized to me twice about the fact that it wasn't hotter. "Couldn't work good iron in this," he rumbled, holding a hand out over the coals. "Bread's a little easier than iron," I said, hoping it was true. I was going to get charred black golems with raw hearts at this rate. Maybe that wouldn't matter, but I gritted my teeth, stuck my left hand into the raging heat, and touched a fingertip to the golem's head. Don't burn. You don't want to burn. There's a lot of heat there, but just pass it through to the centre. You don't have to burn. There was a lot of dough to convince. When I pulled my hand out, my index finger was angry red. I stared at it vaguely, and Aunt Tabitha swung me around and jammed my hand directly into a bucket of water. God's teeth, Mona, are you trying to burn your fingers off? The water was so shockingly cold that I yelped. I pulled my hand out, and most of it was fine, except the fingertip. A big watery blister was already forming. I noticed vaguely that all the little tiny hairs of my arm had burned right off. I had to touch it, I said, cradling my hand. This isn't all one batch of dough. I can't talk to it at a distance like I did the gingerbread. It's not all one thing. I have to make it all one thing. She gave me a look of incomprehension, but Arganel nodded. Not a wizard, he said. Worked with a wizard smith once, though. He said the same thing. Always burning himself on alloys. You're not telling me you're going to have to reach into the oven and burn yourself on every one of these things, said Aunt Tabitha, horrified. I could feel a hysterical laugh somewhere under my ribcage. I shoved it down. I needed Aunt Tabitha to trust me, or at least to not stop me. It's nothing compared to what the Carracks will do, I said, staring down at the blister. If they get through the walls... There was a long, long silence, broken by the hiss of coals and the steaming of too much dough baking too fast over too much heat. Right, honey's good for burns, said Aunt Tabitha grimly. I'll get a crock and some gauze, and try to remember, you're the only wizard they've got, and it won't do anyone any good if you hurt yourself too badly to work before the battle starts. Yes, Aunt Tabitha, I said meekly. It turned out I had to touch the golems twice. The first time I had to convince them not to burn. The second time I had to get them to stand up. Hands heal quick, said Arganel, putting one of his own on my shoulder. He had such ugly hands. Mine were going to be ugly too, after much more of this. It didn't matter. If I was alive to have scarred hands, I didn't care. The shields over the top of the cookie sheet were swung away. Under them, the bread had turned a lovely golden brown, actually, and risen a bit more. The resulting golem was about 12 feet long and maybe 2 feet thick. He was going to be an awfully skinny warrior. Up, I told the golem, fighting the urge to snatch my finger away from the heat. Get up. Get up. We need you to fight. Spiraling Shadows was right. It wasn't any harder to animate something that size than it was to animate the bad cookies. The problem wasn't getting it to live. The problem was keeping it together. It tore itself off the cookie sheet. The bottom had burned as black as char, despite the magic, and it left large rags of dough behind it. The holes made raw white wounds in its back. Scrapers! I gasped to Arganel, my hands deep in the bucket of water, my burnt fingers throbbing furiously. We need to scrape it down. Somehow, he nodded. We'll take care of it. You take care of him. The golem was swaying unsteadily on the far end of the cookie sheet. It was huge, taller than a one-story house, and it looked ridiculously thin and wobbly. Could it hit the enemy? Would it break apart if it tried? How stupid were we to think of fighting the Carracks with something made out of bread dough? It took a step forward and tottered. Oh, gods! Oh, gods, I didn't think about the feet. They're gingerbread men's feet. How is he going to stay upright? I dropped the bucket and lunged for the golem. It didn't have expressions, but I could feel bewilderment through the magic between us. The feet were indeed the problem, or rather, the lack of them. Our gingerbread man can balance on the ends of their legs because they're so small and nimble. The bread golem was about as far from nimble as you can get. Its legs were uneven lumps, same as the rest of it, and if it tried to walk on them, it was going to fall forwards on its face. Hold still, I told it. Don't fall. Lean against that wall. We'll figure something out. The cookie slumped against the wall. It was gigantic. Had arms like flattened tree trunks. It was completely useless if I couldn't get it walking and on the way to the gate. Arganel and Aunt Tabitha came up behind me. We were joined by a skinny apprentice with no eyebrows. All of us stared at the gingerbread man. I thought I might cry. My brilliant idea, and all these people working so hard on it, the stupid thing couldn't even walk. What kind of wizard was I anyway? And I couldn't just bake him with more dough at the feet, because dough doesn't work that way. If you pile up cookie dough, you get wider cookies, not taller ones. Gingerbread men are all kind of flat when you look at them. The base, said the eyebrowless apprentice suddenly. If you had a broader base to walk on, it wouldn't matter. We could strap some kind of plates to his legs, maybe. Of course. He needs shoes, the poor thing, said Tabitha. Argonel, the blacksmith nodded. I think barrels. If he can step into a barrel for each foot, we'll pack it with straw and lash it onto his legs with harness leather. Do you think it'll work? I asked, looking at the strange, thin, gangly golem. I thought it would be more warlike. Argonel paused in between waving apprentices towards the barrels. Mona, I think if I was the enemy and a giant man made of bread came at me, even one as strange as that, I would think twice. Harold, who had been standing a little ways back and scanning the scene with wary eyes, stepped forwards. A soldier's strength is limited, Mona. If they have to act their way through your bread dough army, that's strength they won't have to use on our men. I sighed. They were right. It wasn't enough. I'd hoped deep down that my bread dough men would completely turn the tide, that maybe if I raised enough golems they'd stomp the enemy flat, and none of our troops would get so much as a hangnail. Instead, I had one golem who could barely stand up. How many more was I going to be able to bake before dawn? There was only one way to find out. When the next golem was baking, I went back to the first. I suppose I had some notion that he might be panicking. He was blind and couldn't stand upright on his own, but I really shouldn't have worried. Bread doesn't panic. You can throw bread off a cliff and it will fall without a care in the world. It doesn't have nerves. The golem had been told to lean against the wall, and it was prepared to lean against the wall forever, if necessary. It really wasn't worried. The apprentices, who were wrestling barrels onto the ends of its legs, they were a bit more worried. I darted forwards, put a hand as high up on the golem's leg as I could reach. Lift your foot so they can slide your new shoe on. It lifted a very large foot. Whoa! Aunt Tabitha stood on top of a ladder with a mixing bowl full of buttercream frosting. I grabbed for the bottom of the ladder, which had shuddered when the foot it was leaning against moved. Aunt Tabitha, just a minute, Mona dear, I just have to give the poor little fellow eyes. I held the ladder while the apprentices packed straw furiously into barrels, and my aunt leaned out across the expanse of baked face. When she finally stopped slathering, the bread golem had small, frosting eyes and a vague, goofy smile. Did you have to make him smile, Aunt Tabitha? I asked. I thought it might make him look more friendly. He's supposed to be trampling Carrick's mercenaries. Fine. She sighed, took another handful of icing and drew slanted, angry eyebrows. Happy? Not even a little. The eyebrowless apprentice took the ladder. He had a blister on the side of his face, probably from an encounter with the oven. I glanced down at my burned finger and couldn't resist rubbing another fingertip over it and making the fluid in the blister squish from side to side. Oh, like you've never done that. It hurt. I suspected it was going to hurt a lot more before the night was full. By midnight, 2 more golems were leaning against the wall, and I had a blister on my middle finger to match the one on my first. But the barrels worked. When I asked the first golem to march up and down the courtyard, it did. It had a 10-foot stride and splintered a horse trough without even noticing. I started to feel a little bit more optimistic about its chances. The strain of keeping the golems going wasn't too bad. I've animated dozens of gingerbread men at a time, and 3 golems wasn't much. What was really wearing on me were my bad cookie saboteurs out there in the dark. 23 smart cookies was a lot to keep going. It wasn't exactly that I had to do anything, but I could feel my energy draining away a little at a time. My muscles were a little more tired than they should have been, and when I stood up, my knees were a little bit wobbly. It felt like I was doing everything while carrying a 20-pound pack on my back, and it hadn't seemed a lot heavy at first, but we were a few hours in now, and it was really starting to weigh on me. With the 4th golem baking and the 2nd and 3rd being fitted for their barrels, Aunt Tabitha dragged me into the kitchen. Eat, she said, shoving ham and pickles in front of me. I'm glad it wasn't a sandwich. I don't think I could have faced bread right then. Unexpectedly, the magical weight on me lessened a fraction. It took me a moment to realize that one of the bad cookies must have been destroyed. I frowned into my pickle. I'd been planning on pulling the magic out of them when all this was done. Those things were way too dangerous to be allowed to run around loose, but I still didn't like the thought that some Carracks had wrecked one of my cookies. I hope he hadn't tried to eat it. They were the enemy and all, but there were limits. I mean, I felt like having people eat rat poison cookies went against everything being a baker stood for. I'd gotten halfway through the ham when another cookie went out. Then two. The bowl of bad gingerbread scraps was still on the mantelpiece. I took it down and stuck my fingers in it. What's going on out there? I didn't get anything clear. There was a spatter of images inside my head. Flick, flick, flick. It was like the experiment back when I tried to listen through the scone. Except that there were pictures this time, because the gingerbread men have eyes. They went stuttering by too fast to make anything out. I smelled fire and heard men shouting, and felt the malicious satisfaction of a rat-poisoned cookie who had just done something wicked. I think one of them was running through grass, and another one was dumping gravel into a shoe. One of them was surrounded by legs and was running between boxes, and then somebody was roaring, and there was a frying pan the size of a wagon wheel coming at me, and I dropped the gingerbread bowl. A few seconds later, I lost another cookie, probably the one smacked with a frying pan. I hoped it had managed to do some damage in the kitchen tent beforehand. Mona, Aunt Tabitha looked at me. You're white as a sheet, girl. What's the matter? My head was throbbing, too. Using gingerbread men as spies was never going to catch on if I tried to do that for very long. I'd have to lie down with a cold rag over my eyes. Seeing the world through frosting is hard. Nothing, I said hoarsely. I washed my hands before finishing off my pickles. Nothing I can do about it anyway. Time to go raise the next column. Through the rest of that long, long night, I can only remember two coherent thoughts. The first was this, that I was so tired that if the Carracks breached the walls and killed us all, there was a very good chance that I would sleep through it. The second wasn't so much a thought as a question, and it repeated itself every time I had a breath to spare. Where's Spindle? And we'll leave it there for tonight.
You having significant tea?
I'm having significant tea. And I agree completely. There should absolutely be a Jurassic Park style epilogue with a couple of crookies making their way across a wheat field somewhere.
Folks, which part are we on now? This was part
10 of 12.
Part 10 of 12, and it's cliffhanger endings from here on out, everyone, I'm afraid.
Those of you who've seen Hunt for the Wilder People, content warning swears. If I was to tell you the phrase, shit just got real.
Yeah, exactly. Hunt for the Wilder People's effect.
It really is. If you haven't seen it, please do. It's amazing. I think that all got quite intense. And you know what I think we need?
A break? A little bit of a break?
Maybe,
fun?
maybe a little shenanigans.
Maybe a little shenanigans?
As a treat.
As a treat? Let me find... Why don't you push the shenanigan button?
Already done.
Oh, did you? No, you didn't.
Yes.
Or at least hasn't shown up yet. Well, you've gone to the...
I did both.
Do it again.
Okay.
I'll do it again.
Do it again. Do it on the night. Do it live.
Again.
And now... Seeing it?
No. That's okay, I gotcha. We're gonna get it all shenanigan-y.
We are going to get shenanny.
Shenanny.
Okay, so our first one... Content warning swears, all of the swears.
Yes, there's
all of them.
Swear.
Is called Can I Ask You Something? By Patricia and Clark from Tumblr. Martin, can I ask you something? Elias, I would rather you didn't, but Peter said to me that today that you two are between divorces right now. Yes. That's not a phrase most people would just say married. You know, as in happily married. How little you know us. And our next one, and buckle up for this, everybody.
Yeah, you're not going to be able to get through this without laughing. It's going to be hilarious.
Presenting Spirit Week by K. Cult. I just came up with something fucking hilarious. Please keep reading. What if the Magnus Institute had Spirit Week? A single week where the dress code doesn't apply, as if it applies to the archival stuff anyway, to everyone in the Institute. A single week of absolute chaos. I don't know if England even has Spirit Week. We don't. It involves fun. There's some kind of legislation about it. But we have it here in America. So, the first day of Spirit Week is Pajama Day. John comes in with just an old band t-shirt because he really hates Spirit Week and will only slightly participate to keep Tim from harassing him all day. Tim is wearing a full panda onesie. Daisy and Basira have matching slippers. Melanie has a bunch of Ghost Hunts UK merch on. Martin has normal pajamas. No one expects Elias to participate, but then their boss waltzes into work wearing a onesie covered in eyes and slippers with little ships on them. And Tim is affronted. Tim, John says tiredly, please, don't turn this into a competition. Tim is, in fact, turning it into a competition. The next day is 80s fashion, which means Tim comes in wearing Ray-Bans and a fanny pack and a jean jacket and is confident he has won this round. And that's when Elias comes in wearing lime green leggings, leg warmers, a miniskirt, 15 belts, a fishnet top over a pink vest, and a headband. And Tim almost loses it. Almost. Everyone else realises it's funnier to watch the ensuing drama than actually try to dress up for Spirit Week themselves. John, relieved that the pressure is off of him, returns to his sweater vests. Wednesday's theme is colourful. Tim wears a shirt covered in rainbows, some weird baggy pants that are a painful neon green and printed with vibrant palm trees, rainbow socks, and white shoes that he splatters with violent pink and yellow paint. He's sitting at his desk, smug as hell, and everyone is actually doubting Elias's ability to match Tim, until Martin runs into the archives and says, shaken, Elias is here. Tim's jaw falls open. Elias's hair is dyed bright blue. Scattered on every patch of visible skin are painted green eyes. His suit is so pink, it hurts. His tie is covered in purple and orange stripes that clash horrifically. His dark blue pants, absolutely covered in glow-in-the-dark spiral patterns. His shoes glow and pulse with rainbow lights as he walks, and to top everything off, he has a full-body rainbow cape draped over his shoulders. The archival staff can only gawk in faint, uncomprehending terror. Good morning, Elias says, then turns and walks into his office. Oh boy. Oh, no. No, Tim cannot let this injustice stand. He will reign triumphant, people, and Elias will fall into ruin, crushed beneath Tim's raw fashion sense. It's a flawless goal. John quietly dumps 30 sugar packets into his tea. For Thursday, the theme is twins, which requires a partner. No, John, Basira, Martin and Daisy say at the same time. Fuck yeah, Melanie says. Tim doesn't think Elias even has anyone to match with, but he's still not taking any chances. So he and Melanie end up wearing clout glasses, fluffy pink boas, and matching What the Ghost merchandise. Who's Elias matching with? Tim asks at work on Thursday. John looks pained. You'll see. Elias struts into work hanging off Peter Lucas's arm, and they are identical. They're both in full sea captain gear, matching hats and badges, even shoe brand. They both have wedding rings on their hand, somehow against literally everything. Elias had got Peter to shave his beard and style his hair to perfectly match Elias's. Tim wants to scream. This is my husband, Elias says, not a flicker of emotion on his face. Peter, won't you say hi? Peter looks uncomfortable and miserable, and Tim feels a sharp stab of satisfaction. Then, apparently having served his purpose of antagonizing Tim, Peter hastily says goodbye and vanishes into thin air. It is at this stage that Tim is very, very close to giving up. But it's Friday, and he has one last chance, because Friday is meme day. Elias doesn't even know what memes are, Tim stresses, a manic note in his voice as Martin absently nods along. He's an old man. He hasn't got a clue. Martin politely does not bring up the fact that John looks older than Elias and still knows what a meme is. So Friday goes like this. Tim, on his skateboard, rolling around the Institute. I don't know what the fuck just happened, but I don't really care. I'm gonna get the fuck up out of here. Fuck this shit, I'm out. Tim, wait, what the fuck? Elias, a piece of paper with the words barbecue sauce on it, taped to his chest. Smug. So... So, I'm standing there. Barbecue sauce on my titties. Tim, what the fuck? Daisy, lifting John above her head effortlessly. This bitch empty! John, screaming, I did not consent to this yeet! Melanie, filming, this is going on the official Institute website. Anyway, Elias used his beholding powers to know exactly how to piss Tim off every single day. The Eye revokes his avatarship for several weeks after this debacle, and the Institute no longer has a Spirit Week.
That one's lovely.
And we're done. I did not consent to the yeet.
So very John.
Thank you, folks. This has been a blast, as ever. We should talk briefly about when we will next be around, shouldn't we?
Yes.
We will be continuing our epic journey across Windbound on Sunday morning, 10 a.m. to 12 p.m. Last time we got killed by a bee. This time we won't get killed by a bee. Narrator, I promise nothing. But we are continuing our journey through the survival fantasy game.
My titties in Elias' voice made me laugh so hard, Lewis didn't. Oh, by the way, we have decided that if Oberon is a poop, Elgar is a fart.
Elgar is a fart. Yes. Yeah, butt stabs and burgers on Sunday morning, and then we'll be back here for the penultimate part of A Wizard's Guide to Defensive Baking on Wednesday. Bring your feelings. The book does. And do we...
Halloween is weekend after next.
When have we got Johnny on? Is it November?
November.
Cool. And then the week after next is, of course, Halloween, Horror Christmas. When we will be doing the Little Hope live stream with Hannah and Alex, which will go fine and nothing bad will happen.
And I'm trying to convince Alex to do shenanigans with us. We'll see if it works.
Convince. We'll just do it. He'll go along.
I'll just prepare some in advance and have them. Hey, Alex, say this.
Besides, it's not him we have to convince. Just say these words to Hannah. It'll be funny.
Yeah, exactly.
There you go.
Exactly.
Right. Thank you so much, folks. This has been a delight. We will see you on Sunday morning and then again on Wednesday. Have a good one.